morning. You're watching Daybreak on Bloomberg Quint Live, and I'm Alex Matthew. First, the headlines this morning. Asian stocks have opened with gains post a strong close on Wall Street. The dollar hit 11-month high, while treasuries declined. The European Central Bank is set to halt bond purchases in December. Mario Draghi says the euro economy is strong enough to overcome risks. Saudi Arabia's oil minister has said that the OPEC and its allies will gradually agree to boost oil production. And the editor of the Rising Kashmir magazine or publication, Shujat Bukhari, was shot dead outside his office in Srinagar last evening by unknown assailants. And finally, in the inaugural match of the 2018 FIFA World Cup, Russia thrashed Saudi Arabia 5-0. All right, let's turn to the markets. The S&P 500 edged higher and the Nasdaq reached another record closing high on Thursday after May retail sales posted their biggest gain in 6 months. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle tells you all about that session on Wall Street.
Stocks finished mixed in Thursday's Wall Street session. The Dow finished down by about 0.1%. The S&P 500, though, finished up about 0.25%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq once again outperformed, up 0.9%, nearly 0.9%, putting in another all-time high. Now, behind the strength for the Nasdaq, telecom and the consumer discretionary stocks, those were also among the top sectors for the S&P 500, and overall for that broader index, the S&P 500, 8 of 11 sectors did finish up. Let's break down that strength, though, for the consumer discretionary space, and behind it, lots of media names, among them Dish, Discovery, Comcast, among many others. And this, of course, is a bidding wars breaking out between Comcast and Disney for certain Fox assets. Speaking of Fox, the shares of 21st Century Fox up for a 10th day in a row, gaining about 15% over that time period on speculation that a bidding war could break out. Now that it is in play, those shares simply rising. Again, Fox up for a 10th day in a row. Another piece of strength of the consumer discretionary space was Netflix, up 3.4%, up for a 4th day in a row. And the shares of Etsy absolutely soaring, up 26%. The online homemade goods retailer raised its transaction fee and revenue forecast. Investors clearly liking it. And finally, the dollar having a very strong day as well. In fact, its best day since January, up about 1%. This on strong U.S. retail sales, plus a more dovish than expected ECB. In New York, Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg News.
Well, in the U.S. also, the President Donald Trump has approved tariffs on Chinese goods worth about $50 billion, and the administration is preparing to release a refined list of Chinese products to be hit with those tariffs that hone in on technologies where China wants to establish itself as a leader. Tom McKenzie of Bloomberg News has this report.
Well, so there was this initial list that was published back in April of about 1,300 products that the US wanted to impose these 25% tariffs on, and that would have totaled about $50 billion worth of goods. Now, we're told that that list may have been adjusted, may have seen some of those products taken off. Of course, it was put out for consultation with businesses and trade groups, and as you say, the administration was also put forward an amended list that focused on high-tech products. Either way, we're going to get the final list, we've been told by our sources, at some point Friday. And then, of course, further down the line, we know that the administration in the US is also considering additional restrictions on Chinese investment. The tariffs were pretty well telegraphed by President Trump, of course. He gave that interview to Fox News where he said he was going to act very strongly on trade with China, that China was likely to be upset. But he seems to have brushed off the concerns from the likes of the IMF that these tariffs are going to lead to a spiraling tit-for-tat action and potentially a trade war.
And it's interesting, too, Tom. I mean, the SCMP reporting earlier this morning that China regulators had actually approved this merger between Qualcomm and NXP. So it seems like calmer heads are prevailing right now. But what sort of response should we expect from Beijing?
I mean, that points to the unpredictability of Trump, doesn't it? Because he offered this lifeline to the telecoms maker, Chinese telecoms maker ZTE, despite the protests in Washington that continue. He saw it as a favor to President Xi. And then, as you say, we got this approval of this massive merger, about $43 billion deal. So that issue, at least, has been put to one side. But China's been very clear, and we've heard from our sources that they will, once it's officially enacted these tariffs from the US, because they could be phased in, once it's become official, then China will very quickly respond respond in kind and likely target things like US pork, soybeans and steel. And then for the corporates operating here, there's the longer-term concerns about some of the unofficial measures, whether or not some of their imports around ports here in China, around licensing, some of those get held up as well. That will be an additional concern for the corporates. There's no obvious off-ramp in terms of these trade disputes at this stage. And of course, President Trump himself has said that if China retaliates, he may look at an additional $100 billion worth of tariffs. So it doesn't look good at this stage.
All right, so that's a developing story, but major news yesterday from the European Central Bank, which has shrugged off evidence of a slowdown in the Eurozone and announced that it will phase out the stimulus provided by its massive 3-year bond buying program to the Eurozone economy by the end of this year. Alessandro Speciale of Bloomberg News tells you all about the key decision that will signal the end of an era.
Well, they are trying to give as clear a signal to the markets as they can. They are trying to tell them what they're going to do and what are the risks about what they're doing and how they might react if things go wrong. For now, their assessment is that the economy is doing pretty well, so this allows them to stop buying, and this will probably allow them to raise rates sometime in the second half of 2019. But at the same time, they have clearly said that uncertainties is growing from geopolitics to trade. We know very well what is going on in the US, what is going on in Italy, and all that. And this means that they want to keep their option open to change their programs if needed.
All right, and ECB President Mario Draghi also spoke to the press about the monetary policy, inflation, and also the economy. Listen in.
The Governing Council concluded that progress towards a sustained adjustment in inflation has been substantial so far. With longer-term inflation expectations well anchored, the underlying strength of the euro area economy and the continuing ample degree of monetary accommodation provide grounds to be confident that the sustained convergence of inflation towards our aim will continue in the period ahead. We decided to keep the key ECB interest rates unchanged, and we expect them to remain at their present levels at least through the summer of 2019. The outlook for real GDP growth has been revised down for 2018 and remains unchanged for 2019 and 2020. The risks surrounding the euro area growth outlook remain broadly balanced. Nevertheless, uncertainties related to global factors, including the threat of increased protectionism, have become more prominent. Moreover, the risk of persistent heightened financial market volatility warrants monitoring. The assessment that the Governing Council gave of the current economic environment, of the underlying strength of the economy, while being overall appropriate for achieving the decisions that we've taken today, doesn't want to underplay the existing risks.
All right, just trying to get a sense as to how the Asian markets are panning out. Of course, the early risers, 2 out of 3 of them were in the green, and they continue to be that way. The Nikkei in Japan is up about 0.3%, and the Australian benchmark is actually doing very well in trade, up over 1%. But the Kospi is down about 0.5% in early trade. The Chinese markets have just about opened up, and there doesn't seem to be a big move either way. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong is down about 0.2% in the first few minutes of trade, but we'll have to see how they settle down before we get a sense as to where they're panning out. Let's head to India, though, and Darshan Mehta is here to set you up for the day's trade and also to tell you what's happening in the futures and options space. Darshan, morning. How's it looking? I think that we're still looking for direction in Asia. It's not very clear.
It's not clear. The SGX Nifty is indicating a downtake. Yesterday was not a good day at all. You know, the heavyweights also managed to fall in trade. It was Reliance that managed to hold up the Nifty, but overall it seems weakened. And if you see the ADRs also, Alex, all of them ended with a negative bias. Wipro was down. ICICI Bank Bank was down, Vedanta was down, Tata Motors was down. So all of them seeing selling pressure that's coming in on the counters. The big, even if counters like Infosys, which had 25 years, that also saw selling that came in. Dr. Reddy's was down in trade and HDS. So all the ADRs were down in trade. Even the SGX Nifty is indicating a negative outlook at this point of time, down almost 30 points at this point of time. And we are firmly below the 10,800 mark in trade. So big selling that came in yesterday. If you're looking at it, the Nifty was down almost 58 points, almost 50 points. But somehow, flat closing for the mid caps and small caps in trade yesterday. As far as the Nifty Bank is concerned, the Nifty Bank was down in trade and it was the weekly expiry. But selling pressure coming in on the Nifty PSU Banking Index. It was down 1.5% in trade yesterday. What did well was the Nifty Pharma Index, which continues to surge. It's all up almost 10% in this month itself. So there is enough traction that's happening on the pharma space. Now, the two sectors which saw selling pressure was the IT index as well as the media index, which were down in trade. So these were the two indices which saw significant amount of selling. 11% gain on the pharma index on the month-to-date basis. The PSU Bank Index has done well and the energy index has done well, but it's the pharma index that has managed to outperform this time around. Infra small cap real estate continue to bleed. They have been rather weak as far as this month is concerned. Now, if you're looking at this is actually the weak performance, what's happened in the last 4-5 days. So Nifty Pharma is up almost 6% in the last 4 trading session. The Nifty PSU Banking Index is up almost 2.7% and the energy index is up almost 1%. Similar case, the WIX in the last 4 days is down almost 5% in trade. Metals and infra also down this week. So this is the week to date performance, not the YTD performance. The 52-week high counters which have moved and Glaxo Pharma continues to shine. MNC Pharma is doing well. Page Industries, Reliance hit its fresh lifetime high in trade yesterday. LXC, TCS ahead of the AGM today is up. UBL and VIP Industries are also up. No major counters on the 52-week low. Flows, FIs continue to remain sellers. They sold in 1,300 crores. DIs bought in 578 crores. So it's been a liquidity driven market that is provided only by the DIs, not the FIs at this point of time. Now, if you're looking at the contributors, Reliance and Sun Pharma were the two contributors. The HDFC twins managing to hold on this time around. But Infosys, ICICI Bank and TCS, IT as a pack, led the markets down in trade yesterday. Now, if you're looking at what happened on the FNO side, clear indication is that, there was long unwinding that was seen. A lot of positions were built. The Nifty was down in trade and open interest shed by almost 3% on the Nifty itself. On the Bank Nifty also long unwinding was seen. Open interest was down almost 1% in trade. Now, where were positions taken yesterday? Yesterday, actually, call writers became active at 10,800, 900 and the 11,000. Over the past few days, we've been seeing the red ticks have been much higher and people at positions from 10,600 to 10,900 have started shedding positions in open interest. But this was yesterday only. Let's take a look at where positions are actually. So it still seems that, 10,700, 10,800 is a big support level for the market. Majority of the action will happen between the 10,700 and 10,900 mark in trade. But if the market manages to slide even another 50 to 100 points today, put writers may be under pressure today. Now, as far as the other things are concerned, the 4 stocks in the FNO band remain. Balrampur Chini, Dewan Housing, Jet Airways and Just Dial. What missed it was Infibeam yesterday. Nifty PCR fell in from 1.62 to 1.55 given the fact that selling was there in the market. Similar is the case with the Nifty Bank, which fell in from 1.04 to 0.95. As far as stocks are concerned, couple of stocks I want to point out. Yesterday, ICICI Prudential saw high open interest build up and that was because of the of OFS there, but it got fully subscribed, so probably should see short covering in trade today. The other stock I want to talk about is Aurobindo Pharma. Continues to move ahead on short covering. Yesterday, again, moved below the 610 level. Then you have counters like SRF, which saw short covering on open interest decline of almost 7%. And the final stock I want to point out is Mindtree, which saw fresh short positions. Open interest build-up was 5%.
All right, thanks so much for that, Darshan. The other market that's going to be in focus today is going to be currencies, because there's a lot of movement that took place in global currencies overnight and in the previous session. And that's particularly because of the strength in the US dollar that was displayed. In yesterday's session, the dollar index actually rose 1.43%. What's on your screen right now is the WCRS function. That's essentially the performance of all the major currencies against the dollar as a base. And what you can see is that there's a fair amount of red at the bottom of your screen that indicates that a lot of currencies have actually lost ground against the US dollar. One major aspect of that, of course, we're talking about the improvement in the economy in the US, or signs indicating that the economy is improving, and also the commentary coming in from the European Central Bank that led to a weakness in the euro and selling pressure in the euro. Essentially what happened is that there was an announcement that the interest rates would be kept unchanged in the eurozone, despite the fact that the bond buying program is expected to end at the end of the year. So the euro lost ground against the US dollar yesterday, and also led to strength in the US dollar. You'll have to watch out for the yen as well over the course of today. Of course, the Bank of Japan is going to be announcing the result of its two-day meet in a press conference today. A large expectation that there won't be a change in the monetary policy stance of the Bank of Japan, but a lot of watchers will look for commentary from Governor Kuroda about the weakening of inflation in that economy. So we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. The Bank of Japan, at this point, towing a different line than the other central banks in the major economies. Let's go across to Jayesh Khilani now to give you a sense of how the commodities are panning out. Jayesh, again, oil in focus, I would think.
Morning, Alex. That's right. In fact, it's been a good week for as far as oil is concerned. WTI has gained all days of this week, and in fact has surged about 2% so far in the week. Now, you know, Saudi Arabia is confident that they're going to deliver the output production increase that the market is expecting. And from a brokerage, we have Barclays, which says that OPEC is likely to raise the output and non-OPEC countries will follow suit. But as far as base metals are concerned, the big cues came about from this space, where the index itself lost more than 1%, which is the most since April this year. And now Chinese data is suggesting a slowdown in the economy, which was impacting nickel. That declined the most in over 6 weeks. Lead and copper, in fact, declined more than 1% each. We had zinc and aluminium, which fell less than 1% each. Now, tin was the only metal which ended flat with a positive bias. Now, the other factor that really played out over here, like you were mentioning, was the strength in the dollar index, which surged more than 1.4%. That was the most in since June 2016. That also had an impact on the gold prices, and the fall in the euro also impacted gold. So gold in euro terms rose the most in about 8 months on the back of a dovish ECB.
All right, thanks so much for that, Jayesh. Let's go to Shraddha Babla now, who joins in with the stocks that you have to watch out for in the news today. Shraddha, morning. What are the stocks on your list today?
Good morning, Alex. Starting off with ICICI Prudential Life Insurance Company. So ICICI Bank has said they intend to exercise an over-subscription option to sell an additional 1.43 crore equity shares in ICICI Pru. That's another 1% after yesterday's 1% stake sale. And this overall is in line with the board nod that had come in for a 2% stake sale approval. So watch out for that name. Wipro has been awarded a contract of air cargo management from LATAM Cargo, and also a supply chain management contract from Nokia. So deal wins for this one. Tamil Nadu Newsprint, the board has given its approval for expansion of the pulp mill capacity of 400 tons per day and 1.65 lakh MT of printing and writing paper, and this will be for a total capital outlay of about 2,520 crores. So watch out for that name. Development with respect to ICICI Bank. Now the ET newspaper says that former Supreme Court Judge B.N. Sri Krishna will probe conflict charges against Kochar, and this is with respect to the whistleblower complaint. Remember, in May, the bank had said that they will be looking into this issue and setting up some sort of an inquiry. So watch out for ICICI Bank. We also had a couple of bulk deals. One is GPT Infra Projects, where Ampersand Growth Opportunities Fund sold 0.68% stake, and then you have Saturn Credit Care Network, where Goldman Sachs Singapore has bought 0.73% stake. On the other hand, DBS International Asia has sold 0.73% stake. So these are a list of stocks to watch out for.
All right, thanks so much for that, Shraddha. Now, globally, this is going to turn out to be a big battle in the media space. The battle to acquire 21st Century Fox Entertainment gets more competitive. Comcast's $65 billion bid for Fox tops Disney's bid. Paul Sweeney of Bloomberg Intelligence tells us if Comcast has outfoxed Disney in this race?
Well, I think the Walt Disney Company is going to have to raise its bid. I think they're going to have to get very close to, if not above, the Comcast bid. Because at the end of the day, it does come down to price. But also there's the aspect of, which does Rupert Murdoch and the Murdoch family, what do they prefer? Do they prefer cash now and the tax liability associated with that? Or do they prefer to own stock in the pro forma combined company going forward? We think they absolutely want to be long-term investors in this combined company, and I believe that they prefer the Disney-Fox combination. I think they believe that that is a superior company going forward, and if they're going to be a shareholder in this combined company, they prefer it to be with Disney.
All right, and Somit Sarkar is here to tell you all about the big brokerage calls of the day. Morning, Somit. What do you have for us today?
Good morning, Alex. On the big brokerage calls for the day, first we have is Investec on RBL Bank. Now the brokerage has maintained its buy rating on the stock but has raised the target price to 660 from 630. Now according to the brokerage, the bank is rapidly scaling multiple partnerships, especially with Bajaj Finance, creating its own niche for the bank in the credit card segment. Now this niche will help and drive growth for the bank going forward. Now according to the brokerage, the visibility of return on asset improvement is very high over the next 2 years, and is expecting a 10 basis points improvement in the return on asset, which will also lead to a 40% net profit compounded annual growth rate for the bank going forward. Second we have is Deutsche Bank on UPL. Now the brokerage has maintained its buy rating on the stock with a target price of 890. Now the cross currency movement is favorable for UPL so far according to the brokerage. Now also going forward, margins are expected to expand on the back of the backward integration plans that the company has planned for. Now the brokerage is saying that the company trades at a reasonable discount to Indian and global peers, and it is their preferred pick in the Indian agri-import sector.
All right, thanks so much for that, Somit. There are several stories that you'll find on the website bloombergquint.com, and of course you'll find all the live market action right here. But you can read just a couple that are available right now. Saudi Arabia's oil minister has said it's inevitable that the OPEC and its allies will agree to boost oil output gradually. An increase in production, of course, would cool oil prices, which have spiked in recent past, putting pressure on India's finances. Back home, Punj Lloyd has said that the insolvency plea against the company by ICICI Bank would not be admitted by the National Company Law Tribunal. According to the company, 90% of its lenders support a resolution plan under the leadership of State Bank of India for a restructuring of the outstanding debt of the company. Now, senior journalist and editor of Rising Kashmir newspaper, Shujat Bukhari, was shot dead by 3 to 4 unknown gunmen outside his office in Srinagar. Bukhari was rushed to the hospital almost immediately, but he succumbed to his injuries. 2 of his personal security officers were also killed in the attack. The Editors Guild of India have called his murder an attack on the freedom of the press. Here's a special report.
ये तो शॉकिंग है, इससे ज़्यादा क्या कह सकती हूँ मैं। अभी कुछ दिन पहले ही मुझे मिलने के लिए आया था ये।
investigation is obviously ongoing as to finding the perpetrators of that attack. But meanwhile, yesterday, the 2018 FIFA World Cup kicked off, and host nation Russia won convincingly over Saudi Arabia. The Russians beat the Middle Eastern side 5-0 to set one of the best wins till date in the international match. It's early days though, and the hosts have a long way to go before they can think of lifting the coveted trophy. Have you ever wondered though how that trophy came to pass, how it was made? Here's a bit of a glimpse of the story behind that trophy. Six kgs of gold can probably be estimated. I don't know how much that costs, but winning the World Cup, of course, is priceless. Do stay tuned for a lot more on Bloomberg Quint.